Hello, beautiful people. How are you? And welcome again to this little lesson in English, which I'm sure will have a lot for us. So today, let us proceed with understanding line by line. What does Thomas Hardy have to give us through his poem, The Darkling Thrush? As we discussed in the previous lesson that we had, there is a lot of rhyme, there is a lot of rhythm, there is a lot of lyrical symmetry in his compositions. Apart from that, there is a lot of detailed description also, which he has put into very tiny words. And these are the tiny words we will try to open bit by bit. आप देखेंगे कि जब इन शब्दों को हम खोलना शुरू करेंगे तो इस छोटी डिब्बिया में से एक बहुत बड़ा बड़ा ट्रेजर निकलना शुरू हो जाएगा. तो हम शुरू करते हैं. I leant upon a coppice gate when frost was spectre grey, and winter's dregs made desolate the weakening eye of day. Thomas Hardy says that one day, as he leant, as he was leaning, standing, by taking support on a coppice gate. A coppice gate is generally a gate that opens towards the forest. Houses in the countryside or houses near the woods had big gates in the front and would have gates in either the side or at the back that would face the woods or the forests. So he is leaning towards the forest, looking into the woods. And then these thoughts start coming into his mind. I leant upon a coppice gate when frost was spectre grey. When frost, what is frost? It is a kind of icy surface that forms on everything when it is extremely cold. See, there is something like snow and something like frost. Frost को हिंदी में पाला भी कहा जाता है. जब पाला पड़ता है तो सारे फूल, पौधे, पत्तियां सब कुछ नष्ट होने लगता है. And frost is very bad for any kind of vegetation. It tells us that even the earth has become frozen from underneath. मतलब नीचे से धरती भी एकदम ठंडी हो चुकी है, freeze कर गई है. Let us understand it again. I leant upon a coppice gate. A coppice gate, a gate that looks towards the forests. When frost was spectre grey. And from there, what did Thomas Hardy see? He saw that the spectre, the sight, the landscape and everything in it, as far as his eyes could see, was grey and frosted. Everything was covered in a thin layer of snowy ice, which indicated the extreme cold in that region. And in the introduction, we have already understood that he belonged to a region called Dorset, place called Dorset. I leant upon a coppice gate when frost was spectre grey. If I look at the word very minutely, तो spectre का क्या मतलब होगा? नज़ारा, spectacle. हम कहते हैं ना, हाँ, spectacles. Spectacles चश्मों को कहते हैं क्योंकि चश्मा से हमको दिखता है, चश्मे से हमको दिखता है. तो यहाँ पे spectre क्या है? नज़ारा क्या है? Grey, absolutely dull. There is no sunlight. Sad. Grey also indicates sadness. Grey symbolizes sadness. When frost was spectre grey, when the frost on everything and anything had turned the complete sight in front of me, looking grey and dull. and winter's dregs made desolate the weakening eye of day. And mind you, here he says the winter's dregs. What are dregs? The last dying strains of sunlight. There is a lot of light, generally, when it is daytime. But as the sun begins to set, as nightfall comes, then what happens? When nightfall comes, then everything becomes even bleaker, everything becomes even darker. And winter's dregs made desolate. Desolate? Extremely lonely, extremely cut off. The weakening eye of day. Weakening eye, the death of the day. The coming of nightfall. The weakening eye over here also refers to the light. The tangled vine stems scored the sky like strings of broken lyres, and all mankind that haunted nigh had sought their household fires. The tangled vine stems scored the sky like strings of broken lyres. Let us understand what is a broken lyre. A lyre is a musical instrument that has got strings. Something like the santoor, something like the sarod, something like a broad string instrument. So in case the strings are broken, then what happens? They lie around in a very ugly manner. Broken strings generally look very sad in themselves. They indicate a sense of dysfunctionality, when nothing is functioning. The tangled vine stems, tangled, उलझी हुई. Tangled क्या होगा? उलझी हुई. In other words, entwined, caught in each other. The tangled vine stems. Vine is again a sort of tree, and their stems, these wiry long trees, seem to be entwined and entangled into each other. Why? Because these trees have got no leaves. The leaves have perished. The leaves have perished because of the extreme winter and the frost. And so they look like wiry things standing and in a confusion and entanglement with each other. The tangled vine stems scored the sky. Scored the sky seemed to rise in the sky like strings of broken lyre. And what did they remind the poet of? They reminded him of a beautiful musical instruments whose strings were broken and lying scattered here and there upon each other. And all mankind that haunted nigh had sought their household fires. And all mankind and civilization, human beings, also seem to have deserted the landscape and vanished into the warmth of their homes, seeking the warmth of the fireplace. And all mankind that haunted nigh, that could be seen walking around, one or two in number, had sought their household fires, had also fled from this lonely, desolate landscape, because the sun was almost gone, and the winter night was about to cover everything in darkness. And so even human beings had left the landscape, the spectre that spread in front of him. Where had they gone? They had also gone into the protection of their homes, seeking the warmth of the fireplace. The land's sharp features seem to be the century's corpse outlined, his crypt the cloudy canopy, the wind its death lament. The land's sharp features seem to be the century's corpse outlined. Sharp features over here does not refer to the land's beauty at this point. It refers to the bony skeletal look. On the contrary, यहाँ पर जब वो शार्प फीचर्स की बात कर रहा है, वो हर उस चीज़ की बात कर रहा है जो कि बिल्कुल तारों की तरह या नंगी तारों की तरह से खड़ी हुई हैं, आंखों को चुभ रही हैं, उनके अंदर कोई कर्व्स नहीं है, उनके अंदर कोई सॉफ्टनेस नहीं है, सब कुछ स्केलेटली खड़ा हुआ है. The land's sharp features seem to be the century's corpse outlined. Here for the first time he mentions the century. In other words, he mentions the era. He mentions a century that is coming to an end. And here we are generally talking about the transition from the 18th to the 19th century, when old beliefs were dying and new modern beliefs were rising. So he is more concerned at the moment about the death of the beliefs, death of a century, not about the rising and birth of a new one. The land's sharp features seem to be the century's corpse outlined. It seemed as if the dead skeletal landscape lay in front of him like a corpse, lifeless, infertile. And this corpse reminded him of a century that was coming to its death. His crypt, the cloudy canopy. Whose crypt is he talking about? His, H-I-S, over here refers to the century. The century's corpse, the century's dead body. And here he is talking of his crypt. What is a crypt? The crypt refers to the coffin. It can also refer to the grave. The century's corpse outlined, spread out. His crypt, his grave, the cloudy canopy. It seemed as the dark, grey, desolate sky covered the body of the century as if it were its grave, as if it were its coffin. Canopy is a sort of shade. Canopy is a cover. Canopy is a large umbrella-like cover also. His crypt, the cloudy canopy, the wind, its death lament. And what does he equate the wind with? The wintry sound of the wind. It's not a very fine, pleasing sound. It seemed to be the sound of lamentation. Sound of what? Sound of the windy winter. You see, when there is summer, we look forward to a gentle breeze. That's why we turn on our fans. That's why we turn on our coolers. That's why we turn on our air conditioners. Because we want something in the form of a breeze to hit us. When we walk outside on a windy day in the summer, it is always a very pleasant experience. But the same wind in the winter can be very, very painful. It drops the temperatures further. Not only that, what else does it do? It makes us shiver in cold. And in case there is nothing to stop the wind, then it starts whistling. जिसको कि हिंदी में कहते हैं हवा की साएं साएं. ये साएं साएं बहुत अच्छी नहीं होती है. सर्दियों में यही साएं साएं बहुत ही परेशान करने वाली होती है. तो इसी साएं साएं वाली आवाज़ को वो विंड के लैमेंटेशन कह रहा है. The wind, its death lament. So the breeze, the wind that is blowing in the winter seems to be lamenting the death of a century. So what does lamentation mean? Lamentation means loud grieving. What does lamentation mean? Crying or grieving. This is what lamentation means. जब कोई जोर जोर से दुख में रोता है तो उसको lamentation कहा जाता है. The ancient pulse of germ and birth was shrunken, hard and dry, and every spirit upon earth seemed fervorless as I. The ancient pulse of germ and birth. Pulse over here refers to rhythm. Pulse over here refers to rhythm or beat. Germ. What does germ over here mean? Germ over here does not mean worms. Germs का यहाँ मतलब infection नहीं है. Germ का मतलब है germination. It is a short form for germination. So, what does the short form indicate here? The ancient pulse of germ and birth. Animals give birth, whereas plants germinate. And why is it ancient? Because it has been happening from times immemorable. सदियों से, इसीलिए इसको ancient कहा गया है. सदियों से क्या होता आ रहा है? सदियों से पौधे दूसरे पौधों को जन्म देते हैं और जानवर और इंसान अपने अपने बच्चों को जन्म देते हैं. ये चीज़ सदियों से होती आ रही है, मगर वहाँ पर उस दिन खड़े होकर पोएट को क्या महसूस होता है? पोएट देखता है कि हर तरफ सिर्फ मौत ही मौत जैसे नज़र आती है. ऐसा लगता है कि ना इस ठंड में कुछ जिंदा रहेगा और ना कभी कुछ पैदा होगा, ना कभी पौधे और ना बच्चे. The ancient pulse of germ and birth was shrunken, hard and dry. Shrunken had contracted into nothingness or ceased to exist. We can also use another word here. Ceased to exist. That is what the word shrunken over here is trying to convey. The ancient pulse of germ and birth have shrunken, hard and dry, as if dried out. Fertility had dried out. And every spirit upon earth seemed fervorless as I. And it seemed that every being, every spirit upon this earth was fervorless. Fervorless, hopeless. Unenthusiastic. What is another word you can use here? Unenthusiastic. Oops. Right. So, please, you can have a look. Fervorless over here refers to a state of hopelessness, a state of unenthusiasm, where there is no reason the poet has to look into the future. He seems as if everything is doomed. It brings about a sense of doom. What is doom? When everything comes to an end, when everything dies out. That is the kind of sense he gets. That is the kind of feeling he has when he looks out into the grey, desolate spectre that is full of frost, that is barren. It's a barren landscape. Just like a desert where you have nothing that grows and no life. On the first sight, it seems that nothing lives there and nothing can survive. In the same manner, extreme winter also brings with it such a state upon the land where it comes. So I'll go through the second verse again. The land's sharp features seem to be the century's corpse outlined. The sharp, mangled remains of branches and barren vegetation, and the land that lies before him with no grass and no life, only barren. The land's sharp features seem to be the century's corpse outlined, a lifeless century, the end of a century, as if it had lived its life and now the century had died, leaving behind a barren corpse. And what made its crypt? It seemed as if the clouds had descended a little lower, sad and black and grey, as if to make its coffin and its grave. And the wind seemed to lament the death of the old century, or the century that has passed by. The ancient pulse of germ and birth, the ancient rhythm and tradition of giving birth and rise of everything new had seemed to come to a standstill, as if it had paused, as if it has come to a close. And every spirit upon earth seemed fervorless the ancient pulse of germ and birth was shrunken, hard and dry, and every spirit being, every spirit upon earth seemed fervorless as I. So now that we've done the first two verses, we are left with two more, which we will cover in the third part. So hang on there.